At a former Florida medical examiner who authorities say had kept body parts hidden in a Pensacola storage unit.
We're, of course, talking about former medical examiner Michael Birkeland. As Fox 2 News reporter Andrew Perez explains, it's not his first time getting into trouble.
That's right, Bob. Letitia, we introduced you to Michael Birkeland back in 2007 after medical officials say he failed to complete more than 100 autopsy reports in Northwest Florida. He was fired for it, ultimately had his license pulled. But at what point does a doctor's actions actually become criminal? Authorities say Birkeland was walking that fine line. A warning, some of what you are about to see may be disturbing. We trust doctors with our lives, but we also trust them in death. A medical examiner's job is crucial to solving criminal cases or determining death benefits. More importantly, it's closure for families looking to heal.
The family wants answers to why their loved one's deceased.
Director of the District 1 Medical Examiner's Office, Jeff Martin, says it's closure, though, that's been undone for some families across Northwest Florida. Tucked away in a storage unit in Pensacola, authorities found more than 100 human organs and tissue from more than 100 different bodies. The renter of the unit, former medical examiner Michael Birkeland.
We found complete human hearts. We found complete human brains still intact. They hadn't been dissected or sectioned, which normally that's the part of the autopsy process is to actually look at the tissues.
Reports show Birkeland's unit B12 reached default status for failure to pay on at least 6 different occasions. Each time he settled just before repossession, but in August the unit was officially seized and sold at auction. Martin says the parts found inside were 10 to 15 years old, all retained from private autopsies Birkeland had been performing on the side during his career at the medical examiner's office. Now, about half of these parts and tissues, investigators say, were stored in things like styrofoam cups. They were also wrapped in things like sandwich boxes and Ziploc bags. The other half were stored in actual containers. Investigators say it doesn't appear that Birkeland actually had a reason to keep all these parts.
Looks like he's kept pretty much everything that he's kept or that he's performed an autopsy on while he's been in the state of Florida. I mean, there's so many. It doesn't look like they were just random selected cases that he kept.
Birkeland worked at the District 1 Medical Examiner's Office from 1997 until 2003, when he was fired for not completing autopsy reports. The ME's office says he was given several chances to complete them, but he never did. And complaints from family members, they kept piling up.
It's the worst thing ever. It's a nightmare.
Michelle Helderman says she's been dealing with Birkeland for years following the death of her baby back in 1998 in South Carolina.
I was in the hospital for about 6 hours in labor. He had a healthy heartbeat, and I wasn't dilating, so they decided to do a C-section.
Doctors told her the baby was stillborn, but she had her doubts. In a deposition, a midwife testified that she felt the baby's heartbeat. Helderman moved to Pensacola in 2001, and by 2004 had the body exhumed so that Birkeland could investigate.
At my house, he looked over all my paperwork and said that, he would help me out with my case, and then he had thought that there was some, something fishy about everything.
She claims she paid him $4,000 for an autopsy and DNA test. She says she was shocked when the results came back from the lab.
No results, no DNA.
Helderman says the body was fully intact and was told by the DNA lab that it may have been tainted. She says Birkeland's autopsy came back more than a year later with no new information. At this point, the medical examiner's office says there's really nothing they can do for Helderman. The office, however, says it's gotten numerous complaints from families throughout the area with similar stories about Birkeland.
Our big thing in this that we've heard from a lot of families is that they just never heard back from him. I mean, these are cases where, the families would pay him to perform the service, and then he would never issue autopsy reports in the cases.
We've tried to reach out to Birkeland for his side of the story, Both of his known addresses, though, are vacant. We also paid several visits and put in numerous calls to his attorney, Eric Stevenson. At last word, Stevenson said they are currently working on a defense, looking to explain just why Birkeland kept so many organs and tissue for so long.
His lawyer's quoted as saying he's storing them there just as he would, as a lawyer would legal files.
Florida State Attorney Bill Edens says Birkeland is facing hazardous storage and public nuisance charges for now. But given the bizarre circumstances, he says he's expecting to add theft charges to that.
We had a conference call with all 20 state attorneys from throughout Florida shortly after this, and I asked if any of them had any experience with anything of this nature, and nobody had.
A lot of these families that we've talked to had no idea, and so making that telephone call to them and trying to explain to them that we actually have the brain or the heart of one of their loved ones, it's just extremely shocking to them.
Authorities expect to make a formal decision in the coming week. For now, it appears we've not heard the last of Michael Birkeland. Now, records show Birkeland also had his license revoked at his last job in Missouri for not completing autopsy reports. Authorities say he has pleaded not guilty in this current case. Birkeland has a court date on January 9th, then trial set for January 22nd. We'll let you know what happens with any additional charges.